Howdy folks, welcome back. This is an exercise called Rhythmic Overlays, and this is one I'm particularly excited about. This is an idea that was brought to me by Alexander Freund, who's someone I've interviewed on this channel before. I love this. This is my favorite thing easily. And I wish I could have done this. I wish this could have been part of the regular deck, but we had to unlock it through stretch goals because it is actually quite pricey to do something like this, where we stamp out these holes into the card. But I love that we were able to do it and that we've unlocked this because I think this is easily one of my favorite exercises from all of the songwriting decks. Here's how it works. You grab two cards from the rhythm deck and you overlay them with one another. Now you can take more than two if you want to, but I think best results are achieved if you just overlay two cards on top of one another. The idea here is that by looking at this hole punched pattern here at the bottom, you can create interesting rhythms with that. So all the little boxes that are filled out, i.e. that are not stamped through, those are going to be your notes in a rhythm. And that's really the first exercise that you can do with this little tool here that I've created. And so for example, here we have a rhythm that has notes on the 1, on the 2 and, on the 3 and the 4. So that will be da 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 da. Okay? That will be the rhythm, and you could just take that and turn that into a melody. You know, I believe in da 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 da. You know, that could be a rhythm potentially. Now, obviously, you can also turn these cards over horizontally, and you get a completely different rhythm. You can take one of the cards and turn it over to create yet another different rhythm, and then you can take the other card. Although I guess that would create the rhythm that we had at the start, but. You see there's a lot of, there's almost endless possibilities in combining these cards with one another to create these interesting grooves, or interesting rhythms rather. Now the next thing that you can do with these cards, and this is one of my favorite things, is using it as a kick drum pattern in a drum groove. And again, we have the snare patterns just standing right above that, so we can use those to create some interesting drum grooves. So here we have a kick drum on the 1, 2, and 3 and 4, and we have a snare on the 2 and 3 end. And that's a really cool groove. It's a dun ga dun dun ga dun dun ga dun dun ga dun. Okay, and that's already a pretty cool groove, I think. And again, I can just take any of the cards, turn it over, and create an entirely new groove based on that as well. One thing of note is that when you have a snare placed somewhere, it automatically, that's the rule of the rule of suppressed kicks. That's something that we teach at Holistic Songwriting Academy. If you have a snare placed anywhere in your groove, it's automatically going to delete the kick drum underneath it. Now there are exceptions to this rule that we go over at HSA, but suffice it to say, for this exercise, whenever you see a snare, then don't write a kick drum underneath it, even if it is filled out. And let me see if I can find an example of that just by combining these cards. And I could probably do this logically, but I'm not going to. I guess this way. Yeah, so here, for example, we have a snare and a kick drum standing right on top of one another. In this case, the kick drum is just canceled out, right? So here, instead of having a kick drum on the 2 and, we would just have it on the 1, 3, and 4. And that's really the whole exercise. It can be used to create some interesting drum grooves. Oh, and one thing that you might notice is, in some cases, you might come up with a groove that doesn't have a kick on the 1. Now, that's not really an issue because, I mean, as I said, this exercise can also be used to come up with interesting rhythms just for any instrument. It doesn't have to be necessarily for the drums. If you want, obviously, you can always fill in the first note and create something that has a clear downbeat, which is usually the case in drum grooves. Although I must say, I'm a pretty big fan of trying to write some patterns that don't do this. So for example, here we have a pattern. I've just put two cards together. We have a kick on the 1 end, 2 end, 3 and 4 end, and we have a snare on the 2 and 3 end. So that would create a groove that goes 1, 2, 3, and 4 and dun ga dun dun ga dun dun ga dun dun ga. And I think that's an interesting groove, you know. You don't always have to place a kick on the 1. Sometimes you can create some really interesting things by just not doing that. It can create some really interesting implied tension against the section that you're in. Obviously, in most cases, you are going to place a kick on the 1, but I encourage you to experiment with this, and maybe you can come up with some drum grooves that really haven't been tried before. So this is Rhythmic Overlays.